Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this mini podcast on reviewing the teams ahead of this Saturday and Sunday's fixtures in the Super Rugby Aotearoa competition. Let's get straight into it then. We'll start with the Highlanders versus the Chiefs game on Saturday. So, initial thoughts of the Highlanders, as Joe puts things up that they were posted on their websites earlier. Apart from no real surprises, omissions really from the Highlanders. Again, Sharon Frizzell's in at 6, Aaron Smith at 9 and Josh only at 10. But apart from that, it's not a very strong looking Highlanders team. What do you think, lads?
Yeah, agree with you there. I don't think, as we've kind of spoken about before, even if the strength Highlanders team is still not a brilliant Highlanders team, but yeah, you're lacking for any sort of players you really recognise in that lineup. Even of the top 5 that he went through the other day, which we spoke about not being strong. There's still a few in there that aren't even playing. So yeah, you got your Aaron Smith. We've spoken about Josh Ioane, and then not a huge amount else. Shannon Frizzell as well. But yeah, I'm not a lot of these players that I'm seeing for the first time in this picture. Don't know about you guys.
Yeah. The only interesting one for me is that Josh Mackay, who's the fullback sort of utility outside back, isn't even on the bench, and they're giving a debut to Sam Gilbert, who I've not seen play in Mitre 10, but obviously they was rating him reasonably highly to play him in this first game. And then this will be interesting to see Vilimoni Koroi make his debut as well. He was a sort of interesting fantasy target as a sevens player and former under-20 star. People hoping that he would get some game time, but didn't so far in the Super Rugby season. So hopefully he can do something when he comes on.
I think realistically for Highlanders, if they want to get anything out of this game, yes, they're at home, they're in Dunedin. So with all obviously the changes since Sunday was that the New Zealand have announced that they can have attendance in there. And actually, from looking at the ticket sales, they've sold a hell of a lot of tickets. So these games are going to be really well attended, which is brilliant. So we talked about the home advantage, maybe moving away from the Highlanders, but that's certainly going to come back and really help them out, I think. Again, realistically, though, they're going to rely heavily on Aaron Smith, putting them in the right areas. Josh Ioane's going to have to get the ball in behind the Chiefs. Avoid, which we're going to talk about in a moment, we move on to the Chiefs, avoid Damien McKenzie, who's dangerous, but literally put the ball in the right areas and try and make the Chiefs make mistakes so they can go to the Highlanders, as I've talked about on Sundays, strong scrum, and then hopefully play in the right areas of the field. That's the only way for me I can see them getting anything out of this game, because otherwise, and we'll move on to the Chiefs now, I don't see the Highlanders getting anything out of this game still.
Yeah, I agree.
It is a very strong Chiefs team. Good to see Nepo Laulala's back. I know he missed a good portion of the regular Super Rugby season with a quite unfortunate injury. I think almost in the last pre-season game of the season, last pre-season game leading into the season. So they'll be glad to have him back. Same story really with Luke Jacobson, who would have been on the plane to the World Cup with the All Blacks last year and got a concussion in the last game leading into it and missed the tournament. But he's quite highly rated playing 6.
Am I right in saying about that they've got Caleb Trask at fly half? He sounds like a super villain. I've never heard of him.
He has got a fun name.
Yeah, I like it. But interesting that Cruden's on the bench. I don't know whether Cruden's got had a knock or something, or that Trask has trained well in the week, but it's quite interesting that Cruden's on the bench, but that will provide some much needed experience. If the game's tight in the last 20, Cruden coming off the bench could be useful.
Yeah, very possibly. And especially with when you've got a fullback like Damien McKenzie, the demands on the 10 aren't quite as high to entirely run the back line and create every opportunity for the team. So hopefully good chance for Trask to get with such a good pack ahead of him. Hopefully he has a good game.
Just I think on McKenzie, I think McKenzie again is key to how the Chiefs will play. As you say, like he's at 15, don't be surprised to see him slotting in at fly half. to basically change the point of attack. So again, go back to the Highlanders, but if they want to stop the Chiefs playing, they've got to target Mackenzie and put him under a considerable pressure. Anything from you on that, Tricky, Chiefs wise?
Not particularly. Again, I'm a bit behind you guys on some of these players, and I haven't watched a lot of Super Rugby just yet. But from just kind of quickly looking at these two teams, obviously it's going to be important with Gatland back as coach of the Chiefs. Wasn't he named the best coach of all time recently by Rugby magazine? But obviously we know that he plays quite a strong defensive game, and he likes to have a strong pack and a strong scrum. And it seems as though, from what I can understand, these are probably two of the strongest scrums in the competition. So it might be interesting to see how that plays out. And then obviously the Chiefs have got a lot of firepower in the background with Mackenzie, one of the best players that I love watching Mackenzie play. He's tiny, but he's electric, and he beats defenders for fun. So that's going to be really exciting to watch. Against the back line of the Highlanders, he's just going to have a field day, potentially. Been doing his hard work in the off season, in the short pre-season that they've had. So I think that's going to be one of the interesting things, is how these teams and how these players have used that off time with their quarantine and then coming back into a fairly short pre-season, what they're all going to be looking like. Are they going to be ready? Are they going to be back firing? We know that Bowden Barrett has run something like the New Zealand record in the Bronco test, which is a fitness test. So there's a few players that will have worked really hard and some that won't have. So it's going to be really interesting to see the first match and first examples of that.
I think so. We talked on Sunday about the Chiefs winning this game quite comfortably. Some of us saying about 20 points. From looking at these teams, any changes in your predictions, lads? Or we were keeping it, or we extending the Chiefs winning margin? Maybe, I don't know.
I'd be conservative at 20 points, given that it's the first game back. The scorelines in these New Zealand derbies are normally reasonably tight, even if it's quite clear that one team is going to win. The Highlanders aren't going to give up. They'll keep playing until the final whistle. So yeah, it's unlikely to be a massive score, but the Chiefs should be okay.
Yeah, I think there's a few in that Chiefs team, although it's a strong team, as we've said, it's still not full strength. So I think full strength, you probably are looking at that sort of scoreline potentially. But when you're starting the likes of Caleb Trask, and you've not got Sam Kane, and there's a few others in there that are missing, and of course it's the first game back, which is going to be massively important. I think it's going to be tighter than we initially said last weekend. But I think still 10 points, I'd say. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Excellent. Right, let's move on to probably the game of the weekend, which is on Sunday, the Blues take on the Hurricanes in Auckland. So let's start with the Canes then. So Savea and Fafita, you've got power coming off the bench, but it doesn't look particularly, the Canes not at full strength, so especially in the forward pack. Backs are looking very strong very strong with Lamapi at 12. But interesting to see that Arnie Savea and Fafita are both on the bench for the Canes.
It's going to be some firepower off the bench, isn't it? That's an exciting bench.
Similarly matched, rather. I know we'll do the Blues in a minute, but Dalton Papali'i, if anyone isn't familiar with him, but they are familiar with some of the young English back rows who are coming through, sort of Jack Willis, that kind of type of back row. Papali'i can definitely certainly match Fafita. Be interesting to see how they use him, maybe following Savea around, trying to stop him having the effect at the breakdown that he usually would.
Yeah, good. I think, I haven't got much more to say really on the Canes with that. So let's really talk maybe the team of the week so far, especially on paper. When the Highlanders, Chiefs and Canes look like they've been quite maybe conservative with some decisions, leaving some All Blacks out and on the bench. But the Blues have gone very hard, very early. I think obviously Bowden Barrett's going to make his debut, but coming in at 15, which is an interesting decision. Again, he'd probably be deployed similarly to how Damien McKenzie's going to work at the Chiefs. No Carter, so maybe Carter's not actually up to fully fitness or match readiness, but there's Duffy's getting his 50th appearance off the bench when he comes on, which is a really good achievement for him. So yeah, the Blues are really strong. Ione at 13 seems to be his new position. They're sticking with that. I think himself sort of getting on the front foot is going to cause that centre combination in the Canes quite some interest, and they're going to be run at quite a lot, I think.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's a pretty strong Blues team. I think the only change you would potentially make would be at loose heads, bringing in I can't remember his surname off the top of my head, but Big Carl with his fantastic moustache. He would be the only change for Hodgman, but Hodgman himself is actually more than good enough. Him and Bungafasi are both quite tall for top level props, so they're quite interesting to watch next to James Parsons, who isn't the biggest bloke himself, when they're packing down. And actually, not the thing that you'd immediately look for in a Super Rugby, particularly not a New Zealand Super Rugby team. But the Blues second row of Tuipulotu and Goodhue is far and away the strongest of each of the 4 teams playing this weekend. Tuipulotu right on the edge of All Black selection, and Goodhue quite highly rated, obviously a younger brother of Jack. Younger or older? Either way, yeah, brother of Jack. And not quite as close to All Black selection as Tuipulotu, but still a good player. Another name that people might not be as familiar with is Caleb Clark on the left wing, son of Eroni Clark, who played for the Blues in the 90s, and similar to was it Corroy on the Highlanders bench, another under 20s and 7s performer who has had a few chances in the Blues towards the beginning of this season, but I think spent quite a lot of time away with the 7s team. So now he's back, they'll be keen to use him.
Anything for you to add there, Tricky?
Yeah, I mean, I'm again not as familiar with these teams, but it seems as though, from what I understand, they've stuck closer to a strongest 15 than most of the teams. Back row looks pretty strong, from what I understand. We've spoken about Satutu in them. Excited to see him play. Spoken about the second row and Tuipulotu as the captain in there. And then the back line, although Sam Nock isn't the greatest player, he's probably their best scrum half. And then beyond that, some really real quality in that back line. Rico Ioane perhaps not in his ideal position, but Caleb Clark, we've just mentioned, is a decent player on the wing. And then Mark Talea is top try scorer in the 2020 Super Rugby season.
I think equal, but top defenders beaten.
Yeah.
Headline stat.
One of the top 5 that you mentioned the other day, and he's got some absolute quality. So, and Faiini, very, very strong. And then, of course, Bowden Barrett at 15. So they've really loaded that back line, which is really going to be interesting to see, because we spoke about when I did my top 5, Hurricanes have a really, really strong back line as well, really exciting there. And they're short of a few players. They're short of Cobus Van Wyk that I've spoken about, and the other Barrett. So obviously Barrett's not able to play against each other, which is a bit of a shame. Although a lot of people have been looking forward to that clash, but he's injured, I believe, isn't he? And Tia and Goosen are good substitutes for them. But that backline clash, pretty much all over the backline, is going to be really interesting to watch. I think Lamape and Ato against Faiini and Ioane is going to be exciting, explosive. 4 very good players, 4 very explosive, powerful players. So going to be really excited to see that.
I agree. And something some people might be a bit disappointed that Bowden Barrett's not playing at 10. I know there was some, certainly for the All Blacks, there are some people who really disagree with the idea of starting him at 15 and then having a different 10, either Mackenzie or Mo'unga in at 10. But you might think the same would apply for the Blues, but good tweet from Opta Johnny earlier today that Aotearoa Black has made the most passes leading to a clean break in Super Rugby so far this season. so 11, which is more than any other player. And second most is Perifetta, his teammate, and Vince Arso. So clearly Black is working quite well with the runners coming off him and in this Blues backline. So it makes sense to give him a go with Barrett at 15.
And those that have watched Barrett for a while and over the last years where he's sort of come into his prime really at fly half, but he did start out with his New Zealand career at 15 and he has played there a lot. So this is not saying he's out of position. He's so fast that he can be deployed there when necessary, and that's what they've gone for this week. The only thing that I wanted to just pick up regarding the last thing for the Blues is, and it's probably a bit disappointing, I don't know if he's injured, but Joe Marchant's not included and not starting in, and not in the 23, the England centre, who was fantastic for the Blues during the normal Super Rugby competition this year. So it's a shame we don't get to see him and Ione or him and TJ Fino in the centre, but hopefully we'll see him very soon or later down the line in the competition. So just sort of concluding this here then. So we kind of sort of came to the conclusion on Sunday that the Blues are going to win this game, but very closely. Does that anyone want to change their prediction here, or are we sticking with the Blues for this win?
Oh, it sounds about right. Especially as I know we were making the predictions in the context of there not really being much of a home advantage on Sunday, but obviously since then the tickets went on sale for these matches this weekend, and already I saw that the Blues have already sold out of all of the cheapest tier of adult tickets. So sounds like there could be quite a big crowd in Eden Park, which would be nice to see, although slightly difficult for us on the other side of the world with slightly different conditions.
Yeah, I think that's going to massively play into it when we didn't think it would before. We thought the Blues had come away with it before, but I think now that margin's got to be more than we perhaps thought that it might be, with the Blues building a stronger team than the Hurricanes in comparison, and with that home advantage with probably one of the biggest crowds they would have played in for the Blues for a little while, because we spoke about the crowds aren't always brilliant, but with rugby starting up again, it seems that a lot of people have bought tickets, which is going to be awesome to see. So yeah, I think you got to give it to the Blues based on those factors. Yeah, be excited to see what happens. Hopefully Burden Barrett gets on the score sheet. Sorry, he's already on team.
I'm sure he will. I'm sure he'll pop up somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there we go. That sort of concludes our mini podcast on previewing this week's first round of Super Rugby Aotearoa. So we'll leave it there, and we'll see you on Sunday for the recap and detailed analysis of the first two games. See you soon, lads.
Cheers.